Welcome to Telltale Books. I'm talking in this video about a story from the very earliest days of the horror genre, before there was any science fiction, back when pulp magazines were very young. Weird Tales was founded. And yeah, this video is brought on by the fact that Weird Tales celebrated its 100th anniversary in March of 2023. The first issue of Weird Tales came out in March of 1923. And so I decided I wanted to read that entire issue. All the stories that were in that premiere issue of Weird Tales magazine, starting with the first story as you page into it, which is Dead Man's Tale by Willard Hawkins. Now, Willard Hawkins, he didn't get the cover story. That went to Ooze, but he did get the first story in the table of contents. So as you open the magazine, you start paging into it, the first story you come across is Dead Man's Tale. Willard Hawkins was a writer and an editor, but I can't find very much information about him. I don't know what editing he did or where, and I don't know if he wrote anything outside the genre. Within the horror and science fiction genres, he did publish about a dozen stories, all short stories, no novels. And nothing after the 1950s, even though he lived from 1887 to 1970. So his earliest story, as far as I know, is Dead Man's Tale. In Dead Man's Tale, you start off on a battleground with a soldier rushing forward. And his friend is ahead of him. And he's rushing toward his friend, not to save him, but because he wants to kill his friend, because the two of them are in competition for the same woman. Except in the course of his action, and this is not a spoiler because this is revealed right at the beginning of the story, in the course of his action, he realizes he's dead. He's a ghost. Before he could get very far in moving toward his friend, he was hit by enemy fire. And he is now a ghost, but he still wants to get the girl. So he finds out that he can get into his friend's body and influence it, cause his friend to do whatever, to do things. And so he causes his friend to seem like he's going mad. And then he wants to cause his friend to go after this girl and kill her so that she'll become a ghost and join him in the afterlife. Pretty twisted, right? Pretty twisted, pretty sick. I won't give any more of the synopsis than that. Like I say, this story is pretty well forgotten, but it's not bad for 1923, for a brand new pulp magazine, for a writer who didn't really write much. This story was pretty good. I enjoyed it a lot. And like I say, it has some interesting twists with the situation that I don't know, people who know horror better than I do, tell me if I'm wrong, but I don't think anybody has really done this sort of thing before, with that kind of twisted end of the ghost wanting to get the woman killed so that she'll join him as a ghost. That's pretty sick. And I don't know of anybody else that has written this story at all like that. I recommend this story if you can find it. I recommend reading it because it's enjoyable. but I don't think this could really be called a great story or a top tale. I don't think it quite qualifies for that. And so, where can you find this? Well, it really is only in the first issue of Weird Tales. It hasn't been collected much. It hasn't been collected that I know of. There have been facsimile publishings of that first issue of Weird Tales, which you can get a hold of. There is one on the market now where you can buy it. It's about $10 a copy. Some other fairly recent facsimiles, though, are no longer available from their publisher, and those are going on Abe Books for like $250. And then, of course, there's the original publication itself, the March 1923 original issue, that I found listed for $22,000. So I guess issue 1 of Weird Tales is available on Project Gutenberg and as a PDF online for free. And I would advise that as the best way to go and get it. Because the $10 reproduction, I haven't seen the interior of it, but the cover, it isn't a faithful reproduction of the first issue of Weird Tales. They clip part of the illustration, then they put a totally different titling on it. I would prefer the original cover. I think the original cover looks better than what they did on this reproduction. And so if they did that same kind of stuff with the interior of the magazine, I wouldn't go there. I would go with the PDF. Because all of the others, unless you're filthy rich, are just way too expensive for what this is. I mean, there's just nothing in the first issue of Weird Tales that has really achieved classic status. You don't have anything by Lovecraft. There's nothing by Robert E. Howard. There's no Margaret Brundage cover. You know, it only has the distinction of being the first issue. But it has some good stories in it. I've read this story and I've read Ooze so far, and they're both very good stories. I enjoyed them a lot. And I do recommend getting a hold of the PDF and reading it. So, Willard Hawkins did go on to write other stories. Like I say, not very many. I think about a dozen, one of which did make it into the great science fiction stories edited by Isaac Asimov and Martin H. Greenberg. The second 1940 volume has his short story, The Dwindling Sphere. So I will talk a little bit more about Willard Hawkins, but for this story, hey, if you've read it, leave comments. If you've read anything else by Hawkins, leave comments. If you just feel like saying something, leave comments. But at any rate, don't go away without leaving comments. And like us and subscribe to us and come back for more. I've got lots of videos about lots of old stuff, horror, science fiction, fantasy, classics, all kinds. And newer stuff too, in all kinds of fields.